All right, so this week I have a really cool design trick that utilizes textures in a rather interesting way. This texture here, we're going to go ahead and first take out the color information. It's going to be part of a design. Let's just say it's for a movie or even a television show or something like that. And we're looking to build a background element. And I like this texture here, but I need to change it up a bit. So again, like I mentioned, we're going to take out the color information. And I'm going to use my gradient map technique. So set the foreground colors to the default black and white. And if they're not, just simply press D on your keyboard. Then we'll go under Image Adjustments and choose Gradient Map. It will apply that gradient from black to white and forcing the image to go to black and white, giving us a nice contrast to the background with the texture. So go ahead and click OK there. So the color is removed. Now I'm going to go into the filter menu and go to blur and choose motion blur. Now here we're going to set the angle to 90, so it's straight up and down blur, and the distance are going to go at around 500, so get a really nice streaky blur on this image here. So we're getting a different background element from a textured image already. So with the blur on there, we're going to click OK. And I'm going to go ahead and apply a levels adjustment just to boost the contrast of this background now. So we'll go under Image Adjustments, Levels. We'll boost the highlight area here. Darken up some areas here. There we go. And that looks pretty good. So we'll click OK there. Now, want to fade the bottom here a little bit more. And I'm going to do that with a gradient, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently in that I'm going to use the gradient and using foreground to transparent, which is the second one right here. But we're going to go over here and change the blend mode of this gradient from normal to overlay. What that's going to allow me to do is get a better variation. Instead of just applying a gradient over top of this, it's going to interact with the light and dark pixels here, forcing a lot of the darker gray pixels to black, but leaving a lot of the lighter pixels at white. So if I start just outside the document here, hold down the Shift key and drag up with the gradient, you can see it gives me some variation in the lengths of that versus what the standard gradient tool would give me. So that looks pretty good. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and give a color to this overall background element. I know we took the color out earlier, but it wasn't the color I wanted the background to be at the time. So I'm going to go ahead and do that by adding a hue saturation adjustment layer. So in the adjustment layer menu here at the bottom of the layers panel, go ahead and choose hue saturation. Go ahead and check on colorize. And we can choose any color we like, actually. You can take the hue slider and experiment with different background colors. But I think I'm going to go ahead and start with a blue color at around 200 there. It looks pretty good. And we'll set the saturation to around 50. So now that the background's colored, let's add another element to this background, which is this photo of this girl that I want to be part of my design. It's got a cool kind of cinematic pose or something like that. So it's got cool lighting, cool positioning. So we'll take that, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key and just drag it over to the layout. Make sure it drops in the center, and then I'm going to slide it over to the left side here. Get a more dramatic pose based on the overall background design. Now, in the Layers panel, I want to place this underneath that adjustment layer so it takes on that blue color just like the background is. And of course, now we've got a problem here on the side. I've got the background is kind of abruptly stopping, and it's obstructing my streaky background back here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a layer mask to this layer. So we're going to click on the layer mask icon there, adds a layer mask, which fills the layer. So that's pretty good. It actually fills the layer mask with white. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab my gradient tool once again. This time using that same foreground to transparent, but I'm going to go ahead and put the gradient tool back in normal mode because it was an overlay from a moment ago. And now on that gradient, or on that layer mask rather, make sure you're selected on that. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and just drag from right to left on the side of this image of the girl right here. Drag it over and it gives us a nice fade. And we can see the background a little bit better. I'm going to draw a couple of more gradients on that layer mask because if you're using the foreground to transparent, you can add multiple gradients to a single layer mask and just give it a little bit more fade in those areas there. All right, so we're looking pretty good. Now what I want to add is a grain to this overall layout. Oftentimes in images like this, you'll see they have kind of a texture or a grain going throughout the entire layout because it's got different elements. It kind of brings them all together. So I'm going to do that by creating a new blank layer and filling it with gray. I'm just going to press Shift Delete, use 50% gray, normal, 100%, click OK. It's taken on the blue color of that layer, adjustment layer above it. So on that gray filled layer, I'm going to go under Filter to Noise, Add Noise. And we're going to give us a little bit of a grain amount of about 10%. Distribution set to Gaussian, monochromatic is checked on, and click OK. Now, I'm going to blend this image with my background by changing the layer blend mode from normal to soft light. So that grain is blending. It's blending a little too much still, so I'm just going to drop the opacity of the layer to make it a little less intense, and we'll put that at around 50%. So that looks pretty good. So we've got the colorization, we've got the blending, we've got the grain. Now I just have my text elements because I want to bring in one more design element here, but I need my text in place so I know how to place it in the overall layout. So I've got the fictional title for my movie or television show or whatever it is, and got that in place. What I want to add is this graphic element here of this heart rate graphic as part of the overall design here. Now, obviously it's in color, so I don't need the color information here. So let's again go and do the gradient map, black and white. So it's white on black now. So let's take that element and drag and drop it over. Came over pretty big, so I'm going to zoom out here. Let's put it in free transform and scale the graphic down. Now let's position it. Obviously over here in the layers, it needs to be beneath the adjustment layer at the very least. We'll go ahead and put it beneath the noise layer as well, so it picks up that grain on the graphic. But now you'll notice it's not blending all that perfectly, and that's because it's white on black. So we need to just see the white area and not the black. Now I'm going to position this. You can see where the dot on this monitor, I'm actually going to position that right there over the O on the word other, so it kind of fits in there pretty well. Right there, press enter. Now I'm going to blend this graphic with the overall image. Remember, we want to see just the white and not the black, so we'll change the blend mode from normal to screen, and there our graphic blends in nicely. Now if it's the edges are a little harsh, or if you don't want to see those edge lines, go ahead and put a layer mask on the layer and just give it a nice fade from those edges. And there we have a nice completed design built from starting with that texture file and then running a blur on it to create an interesting, almost like a light element or some mystical element that ultimately complements this overall design layout.